So welcome everyone. Today's seminar is about manuscript and thesis editing and referencing. I know so many people will say, I don't write a manuscript, or I'm not currently writing thesis. So does it really matter for me to attend the seminar, or I don't currently do lots of referencing? But you discover editing and referencing is not just about manuscripts and thesis. If you're working in an NGO, I understand from time to time, there will be some grant applications. All of those requires editing and referencing, formatting, and the rest of them. And even if you are not working in an NGO, from time to time, you do write some short reports for what you do in your organization. So you can see it's very, very important, in every sphere, not just manuscript and thesis. So just a kind of brief introduction to our speaker. Many of us already know the speaker, but if you're new in our midst, you'll benefit a lot from knowing who the speaker is before we proceed. So just introduction to the speaker. The speaker is Dr. Zeribe Nwosu. I have known Zeribe for a long time, actually, since 2002, when we joined to study Bachelor of Medical Laboratory Science in Ebonyi State University. So it's been a long while, and luckily we all graduated at the same time as well. But one key thing that stood out is Zeribe was the best graduating student at the time and specialized in clinical chemistry, whereas myself, I specialized in medical microbiology, parasitology at that time. And we've moved on, did internship, NYSC, before we migrated again. And Zeribe happened to move to London Metropolitan University to continue for MSc Biomedical Science, where he graduated with distinction. And then, as God may have it, he moved again to Germany to study PhD molecular and cellular biology with key interest in liver cancer metabolism, looking at how, liver cancer can be modified with either some targets or some treatment regimen in order to ensure those who have such disease conditions can live longer. And I know the skill he has gained in that PhD is still very, very useful in his postdoctoral research position at the University of Michigan, currently, in which he is applying bioinformatics and molecular biology tools to study pancreatic cancer. And I understand recently he won an award as one of the best postdoctoral research fellows for the year 2021, which is really, really very encouraging. Sometimes we do all of these postdoc or PhD and just end up getting the certificate without getting the award. So those awards are just one of the key things that makes one to stand out, among others. So other activities, Zeribe joins, he has published over 20 publications, which is why he will be teaching us on how we can format manuscripts and also edit theses as well. And one of those 20 publications was published in Nature. For those of us in the science background or biomedical science research area, you discover Nature is one of the best journals across the world, which doesn't actually have a specialized route. So they publish papers in all areas of science and not just in biomedical research area. So that is a very, very good, thing to go to for one, especially an early career researcher, to have his or her paper published in Nature, And some other big journals, you can think about Science, you can think about Cell, New England Journal of Medicine, the Lancet, and the rest of them. So yeah, while we learn how to format a manuscript today, we should start thinking about those big, journal publications or journal outlets so that we can as well get better. So he's a member of several professional associations, including American and European Association for Cancer Research, in which I think he won another award from that group this year as an emerging early career researcher in cancer research area, which is also very, very important. And finally, the last but not the least, he happens to also be the founder of Zeribe Nwosu Foundation, in which we've been working together with him to see how we can make the foundation to be a strong pillar in changing the life of youths, especially, and also Nigeria in particular. And maybe as we progress, we can move on from Africa and maybe go global. But at the moment, we have to start one thing at a time. So thank you so much for those of you who have joined.
Thank you very much to you, Chief Upai, for that wonderful introduction. And I also want to thank everybody who has managed to tune in today for joining us. This is our last presentation for the year. And I think it's fantastic because we've really been engaged in several levels, to share knowledge and discuss and assist students in one way or the other. So I really believe that we're going places and the momentum is with us. So in today's presentation, I will discuss manuscript and thesis editing and referencing. And my name is Zeribe Nwosu. The key thing I would like to give us is an overview of how the presentation will flow. We will talk about editing, why this is important, get into some very specifics later on. And we will also do the same with referencing. And the intention is to keep this largely practical, so to say. So after this overview with this presentation, we will move on to the referencing to Word document, where I will demonstrate some of the things that I would like us to see, especially with respect to editing, but also referencing. And then, of course, we will conclude, we'll take some questions, we will discuss on for that, and maybe network a little bit, although we will have a separate session for networking next month, but we always have this networking components in all of our seminars. So the key starting question here is why editing? Why is this important? Chief Upai mentioned earlier on that some people may be saying to themselves they're not writing manuscripts anymore, especially if or even they're not writing anything at all. I mean, I know some people usually are very scared to write things. And so if you manage to graduate from school, you wash your hands and say, thank God, and no more editing, no more writing. I don't want to worry about this anymore. But then you realize that you're applying for a job the next month. You realize that you're applying for scholarship. You realize that you are sending an application for a grant, and that somehow you will have to write a document. And therefore it becomes critical that we know the specifics of how to make it an easy process for us. So the traditional way of editing documents is that someone has written something or you've written something and you're sending it to your, supervisor, and he or she is, making corrections with pen and paper. Maybe you printed it out, and then you have to send it back to they have to send it back to you, and then you probably then try to effect these corrections. You can already see from this photo what looks like a sample of that. This is very laborious, you can imagine. It's sometimes very difficult to track all of these corrections. And as a matter of fact, some of the changes will eventually not be implemented. So the alternative to that is something that is a lot more automated, which is what we do with Word document, and which is what I'll be demonstrating to us today. So you have, this is a snippet from a manuscript that I wrote in my PhD time, which I will also show you. because there are some issues there that I would like to point out. Right. So there's a snippet from that manuscript when it was in the very formative stage of it. And here you can see some corrections that have been made, in this case by myself. This is me correcting what I already had written. So this is still me because I have a different ID in my computer at home and a computer in the office. But I track it because at some point I know that maybe there was an intention when I wrote something in a certain way. And now when I'm correcting at that time, maybe depending on how I'm feeling at the time, I'm seeing things differently. And then maybe when I come back to read the document again, I feel like what I had done before would have been a better version. So I keep track of my own corrections, then I can go back to them if need be. So, but why do we edit? We want to ensure that we, have accuracy in our work. We try to make sure we can keep track of the corrections and implement them. And of course, multiple versions of our work, addressing typographic errors and word count issues. Sometimes some of you are writing, most of us are writing documents where we have to have specific word limits. And it's important that you are in the course of editing and trying to keep with that word limit, that you don't lose vital information. And of course, we want to harmonize fonts as part of editing. And then we need to keep in mind that our readers usually enjoy well-edited work. If your work is well-written, it's well-edited, your readers are going to be happy and they will pay attention more. If the work is shabby, if it's, really disorganized, then you have the difficulty that you bore them out. And at some point, they probably want to do other things than spend time within your work. You want to keep your readers engaged throughout. This is a key point that I would like to drive home. So we have the option to use Word documents, as I will show later on, to process our work and make sure that it's devoid of certain kind of errors. So the other point that I would like to mention is plagiarism. Plagiarism is a very serious problem in research, in science. So plagiarism is simply taking someone's work and presenting it as your own. And actually, work can have multiple connotations here. It can also be research, somebody's research work of ideas or discoveries, as the case may be. But here we're just talking about written work as pertains to students, most of us, one way or the other. So the most common for students is copying articles or text from an article verbatim. This is an error that many students commit, and I have seen it many times. And it's very easy to spot. Actually, in some instances, I don't even need a plagiarism checker. I just read the document and I say to myself, oh, well, this sounds like something that may have been copied from somewhere. And another point, I begin to feel a little bit uncomfortable with the article. And this is something you want to avoid. You don't want to bias your readers negatively by virtue of what you have presented before them. Right. So some examples, as I mentioned, is people copying, things from, thesis or grant, published work, other people's work. And actually, sometimes you can also plagiarize yourself. There is what they call self-plagiarism. That is where you copy what you have presented already or published already. You copy it and present it or publish it the second time. That also is plagiarism, right? So the fact that the work was done by someone else or that was done by you but then published, it doesn't necessarily mean that if you then take it and maybe sort of clean it up a little bit and publish it again, that you are, escaping the whole, concept of plagiarism. So though it says someone else's work in the beginning, it can be also plagiarizing yourself. So this is something we need to take into consideration. Right, it's a violation of academic integrity. Actually, I didn't know about this so much, and a lot of us didn't know too much about this in Africa, in Nigeria in particular, I would say, but when I went abroad, I saw many students had problems, many international students had problems because of, their contents were plagiarized or had elements of that suggested plagiarism. in which many instances they score 0. Automatically you score 0 for that. And if you're an international student on visa, and well, maybe now you have 1 year after studies, then in the UK, so you have a little bit of breathing space, or 2 years as case, maybe you have a little bit of breathing space. Then we had only 4 months. And if you are to receive a course, you would have to wait for the next cycle. This means that you're going to overstay your visa, and you're going to run into multiple problems when you go to renew your visa. If you are renewing your visa because you failed the course, because it's a fail for your thesis, if for any content in which you have been found to have plagiarized, it's an automatic fail. And this is something, therefore, that is very important to give us an orientation also for many of us. I know that many of us, especially those of us in the Zeribe Nwosu Foundation Telegram group, are very actively engaged in applying for schools. It is very important that you know this, because for the amount of money you're paying to go to school abroad, you cannot afford to make a mistake that will mean eventually that you don't get your certificate and that you don't actually achieve the goal for which you have traveled abroad. So it is very important. And if this is the only thing that anybody will take from this presentation today, I will be happy. We must do whatever is necessary, and I've written that also down the line, to avoid plagiarism, but we cannot overemphasize this particular subject. So it's considered cheating, theft, and it's also considered unethical. In most universities in Europe, at least, and in America, it's seen to be a very, very serious offense. And people must be mindful about this, at least from today onwards. So, and in some countries, you can actually be imprisoned for it. Again, for plagiarism, depending on the extent of it. And therefore, we must make every effort to avoid plagiarism. And so how do you avoid that? I mean, one of the questions that somebody asked in the form is how can someone avoid plagiarism? The first thing is to avoid taking tests verbatim. If you are reading a text that someone has written and you want to quote that text, you have to sort of summarize it and present it in your own words. I think I've written that also down the line. But if you must quote it verbatim, then use quotation mark. I think it can be boring if you have to quote up and down in your thesis or in a document, but there is no other way to avoid plagiarism. But that also doesn't necessarily mean that you don't cite the author. You have to cite the author, nevertheless. So read, understand, and summarize or paraphrase in your own words. Try to understand what you're reading, digest it, and present it the way you understand it, not the way it is described in this other study that you are reading from. Then cite the source of the statement or sentence where applicable. And then cite the original author of that work, and not extracting a citation from another paper or online content. This is what a lot of people do. You pick a manuscript, you copy the content of the manuscript, and you also copy the citation that they cited. So you don't read the manuscript, you don't read the content per se. You cite their citation, and at the end of the day, the context in which they were citing that paper may be different. And you have to think about it that they probably have read, if all things being equal, they have read the manuscript, maybe a 20-page or 10-page manuscript, and they have summarized it in, let's say, 1 sentence. So their own summary of the manuscript is likely going to be different from your own summary of the manuscript if you were to read it from beginning to end. So do your own homework and make sure that you are citing the original author. Then, of course, use Plagiarism Checker. I don't actually emphasize this too much, and I don't use them. I cannot remember the last time I used Plagiarism Checker. That must have been like 10 years ago at the start of my master's. Again, when I first began to realize that how serious the university and, was taking plagiarism, and the people were really being punished seriously when they plagiarize. And most of those were international students who didn't know about these things, right? So I think that's when I used Plagiarism Checker for the first time, and I think probably also the last time. Now, when I write, I don't need it, because I try to state things in my own words. By the way, there are also some aspects that you just cannot change. For example, a reference if an author has written something, a manuscript has a title, or a book has a title, and you are mentioning that book, there's no other way. You have to mention that book as it is. There is no other way. And so therefore, most plagiarism checkers have, a way to break down the article part by part. Things like, for those of us in research, things like research methods, something like Western blot. If you pick 100 papers and look at the description of Western blot, you will see that plus or minus, it is almost the same, but maybe some things are just tweaked here and there to sort of make sure that there's a difference. For example, antibodies may be different between one study and another, or if it's PCR or qPCR, the primers and the targets may be different. But the concept, that you did RNA extraction and converted to cDNA and all of that will be the same for the most studies. So most plagiarism checkers are actually able to go section by section. So therefore, you are able, whoever is assessing your document is able to see the aspects where they should focus mostly on to look out for plagiarism. That mostly will be things like introduction. Also, most times, actually, the whole of the work can be screened first of all to get an overall an overview, but then they will focus more on aspects like introduction, aspects like results, and discussion, because these areas are most likely expected to be different based on your own work. And if they are seeing a lot of overlap with what is already published, then to a reasonable extent, they can flag your document as having plagiarized content. So these are some programs for checking for plagiarism in your written work. I'm not going to go through them per se, because again, I personally don't necessarily promote them because I don't think that we should know about them, but I don't think we should think about using them if we have synthesized the work in our own words. Yeah, so that's the point again. Try to synthesize what you are writing in your own words so that you do not run into any problem. All right, so the other part we'll be talking about is referencing. So referencing, needless to say, and I will show you an example of this, manual referencing is very laborious, it's very time consuming and error prone. This is something that during the time of my PhD, up to my PhD, I was doing, you wouldn't believe this, I was doing manual referencing. And I know that many of you are still doing manual referencing today. It is extremely time consuming, very time consuming, and it's also very error prone. And so that is something that I realized as, I was reviewing some documents and discussing a couple of concepts. I said, at some point we are running to learn the big things, that these little things that can save us time, make us more efficient, we don't know them. So therefore, that's one of the things the foundation wants to do, to identify these tiny bits of knowledge that we need to grow and bring them to our notice. So I hope that at the end of today, nobody will have to do manual referencing again. Yeah, so needless to say, when you have to do this automatically, it's therefore faster, and then of course it's less prone to errors. There are a lot of tools for referencing. I will talk just about Zotero today because it's free, number one, so anybody can have it. You all can have it in your laptop as from today. If you don't have it already, it's free and it does the job very, very well. And it has several thousands of referencing styles for many research journals. And so therefore, it's sufficient for you to do all manner of professional referencing for your thesis, for your manuscript, for your, if you like, grant as well. Let's now go to the practical session. So what will happen is I will stop sharing this screen and then I will begin to show you. It's going to be a little bit here and there because I'm going to make reference to online portals and stuff. But I wanted to make sure that I carry us along to the extent possible in the different steps, that you really get into why we are doing this today and why it is important, and that you're able to pick up one or two things from this process as well. What I'm sharing with you guys today is something that comes from personal practical experience. this is a manuscript that I wrote when I was in my PhD time. And this is just a 31-page document. You can see on the left here, it's a 31-page document at the time. And I just want, but this was one of the first piece of work that I wrote. And that's why I'm bringing it up as well. Now, first thing, this whole work the referencing was done manually. So this is me at the PhD level. So that's why I said that I know that many of you are in the same situation, right? And this is something that is unbelievably time consuming. You cannot, you just should not do it anymore. All right. So these references, as you can see, are not linked. There's nothing here. So I wrote these things. And now when I send this document to my PI to correct, this is him, Stephen Dooley, making fantastic guy. He's making corrections, and every person is working on the document. Now, if I am praying that he doesn't delete anything, because if he deletes something, for example, if he deletes this chunk, I would have to go to the referencing. If we delete this chunk, it's not reflected in the referencing list. And therefore, with that deletion, with this part removed, I have to go back manually to check which part, what did they delete, which part, and which references went out or were there. And then I have to search this document from beginning to end to find where those references are. And then I will go to maybe delete them or replace them, as the case may be. This is an impossible amount of work. And I did this thing also for my PhD thesis to some extent. And that alone, referencing alone kept me, I remember one day kept me in the lab, in the office, the whole night, because there were some corrections that needed to be made. So this is very critical that we don't, do this manual referencing thing. I just wanted to bring that up first. But the key thing I wanted to actually show us is the editing thing. And I wanted to use this because it does, it does have also multiple persons. So my PI is there and I'm here. The good thing is that I'm able to keep track of what corrections were made by who with the editing. So basically I can see, what comment I made my own corrections, and then what comment he added. And then for example, here he says climb Großschreibung be acting, so that I mentioned small, that I should pay attention to using small letters and capital letters. That's what he was referring to with respect to genes. And, and then he has additional comments, that I can also, add, make mention of something about a particular, I don't know, in this case, paper or so, right? Those comments are being, this is my part of editing. I'm talking about now editing. Those comments, I can see them, and then I can think about what to do to address them. And that is what you are seeing. And every time you make these edits, you have these lines here, showing you, where there's a likely correction or input or addition or something was then deleted. So you have to pay attention on the left-hand side. Whenever you see those lines, that there must be something that was changed or modified in the text at that phase. Again, this is the idea of doing this seminar in the first place was because we were correcting personal statements for people, and we realized that we were making these edits, and many people don't actually know how to follow those edits. And then instead of calling one person to explain it for them, we decided that we have to do a seminar for this, because we know for sure that this is something that a lot of students do not necessarily know about. So, and I hope that this helps you from now on to be able to improve your work. So let me go back to the other document that I want to refer to for the actual practical session. Okay, so you have sent me a document to edit for you, or you are sending it to your PI to edit for you. This is, again, an excerpt from this document that I just showed you, but I just wanted to put this so like it's easier for me to manage it. Now, there are a couple of things that we want to deal with for a start. There's a section of this, hold on 1 second. There's a section of this Word document that says review. You see this? So maybe when you watch this video later on and you have access to your own Word document, you are able to follow this more carefully. So that says review, right? Here we have a couple of things that I want you to be aware of from now on and to use to improve your work. But before I get into that proper, you can, if you look at this text, there are a couple of things going on. You know, some of the tests are bigger. Some of them are of different colors. So this, for example, this is a different color from this one. It's a different color. And here I can see that this is, maybe I can just go to home so that you can appreciate this a lot better. So if I just select all of this, keep an eye on this here. Okay, you see where my cursor is? If I select all of this now, this disappears. It tells me that there are at least one other font here. So, and if I look very carefully, I can see that this is a different font. I know because I put that here, but I'm just mentioning this to you for some reason. I'm going to make a key point in a bit as well. So here I can see that this is Times New Roman, and then I can see that this is Arial. All right. So what actually am I trying to say here? If you sent me a work, a manuscript to review, or you have written a thesis, and I'm already getting the impression that somehow you may have copied this from multiple sources, because that's one of the reasons why you have one text, some are coming as Arial and some are coming as a Times New Roman. So I would say to myself, okay, it's likely that this person may have copied this work from somewhere. So you immediately, just by virtue of the fact that the texts are different, that already begins to raise some suspicion. I can also see that the font sizes are different. This one is 14, and this one is this one is 12, right? So again, another red flag. There is something is going on here. So what am I doing now? Rather than spend time thinking about what you sent to me, I am thinking about where you copied this from. So you're distracting me, and in a negative sense. So this is what many students don't know. And this applies also to a personal statement. When you're applying for personal statement, when you're applying for job or scholarship or school admission, the same principle applies. The reader is now concerned more about how you source the data, or the work you are presenting, rather than the content. So that is one reason why editing is very critical. So right now, I can see that you know, there are different issues, colors, and that's number one. I'm not happy with that as a reviewer. But then what we're trying to do today is, how do you improve on all of this? Before you begin to send your work out, the first thing you want to do is, whereby all of these are the same text, part of a paragraph, and you want to make sure that the tests are the same. The first thing you want to do is to select all of them and then check, and then you see that this has disappeared, telling you that the tests are different, and therefore you want to harmonize the text. What font size, what font type do you want to use? Let's say Times New Roman. You select that, and then you select Times New Roman. Everything now is Times New Roman. But it has not solved the other problem, because you see that in the font sizes are not showing. The font size is not showing, and that is primarily because the fonts are of different sizes. Right. So the second thing you want to do is, what font size do you want to use? Maybe 11, 12, you click 12. It harmonizes everything. So at this point in time, we have the same font type, we have the same font size. The next thing you want to think about is, in this case, that you have different colors here, right, versus here and here. So black is a color, red is a color, gray is a color, right? 3 colors. Is that what you really want to have here? I suppose no. So you harmonize the colors as well. Again, maybe some of these things may be already known to many of you, but I know that the vast majority of you probably, this is something new in a way, but it's worthwhile also to emphasize it therefore. So then you select all of this and you harmonize the color, right? You come to this place and you make the same color. So at this point in time, you have the same color, and maybe this red also we have to make it black. So we have the same color, we have the same font, and we have the same sizes. You can leave, in this, I usually like to write to make the references of different colors so that I will see them. But why was that important? That actually is not important. That was important because I was doing the references manually. So I wanted to have a way to see, what I'm editing, what references I'm using easily. But if you have an automatic referencing, you don't need to start coloring them for that purpose, because when you change anything, it will automatically change at the end. All right. So there is also another thing here. You can see that this is actually, you see this is italicized. Again, why is this italicized? That may tell me that if there's no particular reason for that, that may tell me that, again, you copied that somewhere from somewhere else. So now we have to harmonize that as well. So making sure that you have that consistency creates a document that is much more beautiful to see, to visualize, and then gives the reader less things to think about, and then they can think more on the substance of what you have written. Okay, so I want to go back to all of those errors, because I want to actually track them so that you can see the whole essence of this tracking thing that we are discussing today. So we come to review. Now, here, let's just start from the start. The first thing you can do here is spelling and grammar. Somebody said, how can we avoid grammar and error, spelling issues? I don't know why we keep having this issue. You can give me 1 second. Nice. Okay, so for we start from here for spelling and grammar. If you click this ABC, you see that it automatically tells me that there is an error here. It tells me that it gives me two more as an error. But this is not an error because I was, at that time I was in Europe, I was writing usually more British English. Here in America with two more, the U is not used. So this I will have to remove this U, and then it will be TUMORS in this case. So that's just, I just wanted to show you one thing that you can spot from here. So with these two, you can spot, and then if you go back again, you see that you can spot another error. I intentionally made this just to drive home this point. So it's mitochondria, I wrote my mitochondria. So you can see that it has highlighted it. So we can actually highlight all of the errors in this test this way. So this is one way you can spell check your work. All right. So, and also grammar. Then there is another tool here for thesaurus. For example, if you select a word, let me see a word now, initial, you can select thesaurus. It gives me multiple alternative words that I can use. This is very important when you are writing, for those of you who have personal statements where they tell you to provide 20 characters or 100 characters, or let's say 2,000 characters. They don't say word limit, they don't say page limit, they say characters. So therefore you begin to think about actively how to reduce the use of long words. Why you want to use words that are too long? When, for example, a word like demonstrate, everybody likes to say, we demonstrated. We should. It makes it simple. It's just, and that's almost half the other word. So you use words that are shorter, save character, and get your message also sharpened at the end. So thesaurus can help you to do that. And that is all part of the review part. Okay, the other one is word count. Here, if you select, but this is because I selected one word. If I don't select anything else and just click here now, I can see that I have 3 pages. I have 770 words in the count with character or without character. So you can also check this information very easily here. You can see that information here at the bottom as well, to some extent. There's a read aloud. I'm not going to activate that it reads the document for you. Checking accessibility. I think this has to do with people with disability, etc. You can also translate. This we don't necessarily need, but you can translate a section of the selection of your document to other languages if you want, to German or English, it's possible. And then this is so I think this is also, like, for example, if I want to set this document to see, for example, now it's saying US English, that's why it's highlighting this too much an error. If I'm writing a document and I want it to see it much more British, Then I will go to select an English that is UK, so as to make sure that it will not be highlighting things like tumor as error for me. Then the other aspect is comment. When I have this document and maybe I'm trying to make a comment to you, something to change, I usually will just select, for example, here, I will make a comment here, and I will say, why is this in italics? Something like that. So now, when you see this document from me, you can see that I added a comment that, you should pay attention to this. And if there's a reason, you can explain that. Otherwise, because I think, for example, if you right click on this, you can respond to this comment. You can actually just say to me, I want it that way. Of course, I'm not going to accept that. If you just tell me you want it that way, you're going to give reason because, that is how maybe this authors recommended that we should, cite this part. But, I'm just making the point that you can, respond to those comments in a way that helps to improve the second edits of the work. So that somebody will know, okay, I don't have to criticize this particular thing again because I criticize it and you give me a response and I am happy with the response, we move to the next thing. Okay. So once the comment is there and you have addressed it, you can then delete it. Again, this is important also because I don't want to correct people's personal statements and they go and upload even my comment and everything to the school that they're applying to, because automatically they will say, oh, okay, this document, number one, you're telling them that you have skills in IT and computer, Microsoft Word. They will say, okay, it doesn't seem like you have the skills. But secondly, now that they have the 1,000 people work for your document, maybe this is no longer your personal statement, So you want to be careful that before you upload that document, that you make sure that any comment is removed, so that you don't necessarily implicate yourself. All right. So when you have this comment and you don't need it, we can delete it from here, right? There's an aspect there to delete it, but also you can just right click on it. It should be possible to delete it as well from here. All right. And if you've resolved it, you can, if you resolve it and don't want to delete it, you can just click resolved and it usually just gets gray. So the person will know that, okay, it's been taken care of, but at that point, you can as well just delete it. But the other important part I want to show us is to track those changes. It is important that when you have these corrections, that you keep track of them. Because sometimes I'm editing something, I'm not sure exactly what you're saying and why you're saying it that way. And then later on, that that you had the specific reason to state something in a certain way. Then you can go back to your own original version or try to explain it to me or to anybody that is involved. So here is the place I want you to pay attention to. If you come to this place, once I have your document in front of me, as a reviewer or as let's say a student I'm supervising, the first thing I will do is to activate the track changes, so that all the changes I make now can be visible. So let's start with this one. We don't like this italicized, so we just now can correct that. Once we do that, you see that there's something now telling you that I have made a change in the formatting, and it marks this place, right? This one, then I found that the whole of this document now should be harmonized in terms of font size and type. So I can say font size is 12. I select that, and I can say also this is now we were with Arial, so I think we'll stick to that, right? So at that point, you can see now it's beginning to look a little bit scary, but I've just made only 2 changes, right? Now, the next thing is we want to make this one black because there's no reason for it to be gray. I have also formatted this one. Okay, so there were some, you can see that there are some things that are underlined because supposedly they are not correct. This is nevertheless, I intentionally removed the in between it, just made it nevertheless. So here, there's a mistake. I can just put now nevertheless. So you see that there's a different color, again, indicating that there has been a correction here. This is mitochondrial. That's what was meant. I correct that. Now, what happens if someone wrote me a message recently asking that the corrections that I made, the document had different colors. what happens is that if there are different people working on the document, then it will show in different colors. So maybe now mine is showing blue, another person is making correction, then it's probably going to show as red. So that's not something to be too concerned about. Then sometimes I also highlight things like this. For example, I don't know, I can say I'm not sure this is the pioneer by chemist from where. You know, I can just make this now in yellow. Then say pioneer by chemist from Germany, because this guy is a German. Right. So there is an insertion here, and I have highlighted this. And when I'm sending this back to you, you're going to see, you know, that there's something I want you to pay attention to. It's not as if it's anything, it's not as if it's a mistake. I just want you to pay attention to that. And this is what I inserted. So let's go back to, you know, making additional changes there, or maybe affecting the correction. So you've received this document. I don't want to spend more time on this, but you get the gist already. You've received it. What you need to do is to go line by line and see what the corrections are, and also to see how they tally with your original document. The original document is not lost. If you come to this place and say original document, it brings me to that document, what you sent to me, the original document as I had it in the beginning. So it's there. All those corrections are hidden under it. So when I say now, let's say simple markup, it will show me that there was a general change, but it wouldn't necessarily point out those corrections that were made, you know, where they were. You just marks out, you know, that there was an overall change. Now, if I then go to all markup, which is where you want to be when you receive the document, then you can see where the changes are. So first of all, so Zeribe changed this one now to, you know, normal regular text. I am happy with that. I will accept that. So I can select this, and I will come to this place where you say accept. I accept it. Okay. Next, he inserted Germany from here, and I'm happy with that. I also make accept. Okay. And then next, he said, nevertheless, okay, this is correct. Also, mitochondria is correct. I accept that. Right. So then there seems that there is no other major change here. It's just font size. And then I also accept them, select all of those, and I come to this place and accept. Okay, and font size was changed here. I'm happy with those changes. I select those and also accept. You know, then again, I harmonize. So if you're happy with all it, if you go through everything and you're happy with it, you can just select all of them and then do accept. Then you have a new document. And here, this one is in yellow, and you can just come back again to this place and remove that yellow. Say no color. Again, simple stuff, but not everybody knows it, so it's worthwhile. And then with that now being said, there is still highlight issue, which I will now come back to this place and accept. And now I can take out this comment because we have harmonized this document, and now we have a clean document. So this is just simply how you can go through the editing. So when I send this document to you, especially those in the Foundation Telegram group that I have edited their work, and also if your PI is sending your supervisor is sending your document, for those of you who are outside the group, but you know, having documents to deal with, there's nothing to panic about. When you see all of those, when you see all of those things here, you see them at first. At the start of my PhD, I'll see this and I'll become really angry, to be honest. I'll become unhappy, you know, how can he have made so many changes? But actually, if you pay attention to it, it's just very few changes. And so this is very important because it also helps you in terms of how you accept the feedback. All right, let's just quickly move on to the second one on plagiarism. So if you look at, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I think the concept really should be clear from the initial presentation that I gave. So, but one mistake a lot of us make is in the beginning is to go copy something from somewhere. And for example, here I've copied something from Wikipedia to drive from that point. So people just copy from Wikipedia and then pasting. And sometimes people just leave everything as it is. And I have had several times when I'm reviewing people's work, and then I move my cursor over this, and I see which tells me disease, and I click on this immediately. It takes me. Oh, you're not. I'm not sharing the screen now, so you're not seeing that. I click on that immediately. It takes me to Wikipedia. That is a disaster. So the reader already knows that this is copied. One thing that I also want to bring up along that line, as we move down these tabs here that I would like us to know about, is if you sent this document to me, let's say you submitted a grant and you're submitting another grant also, let's say you have them in one document, there is a tool here, there's an aspect here that allows us to actually compare documents. So I can actually compare this document with the previous document to see where changes are. And if it appears that if it is something that you wanted to send, for example, also students play this trick a lot, send your document to make corrections and you're sending a person back to what you call corrected version that is actually just literally no change. We can compare these two documents, put the old one here, put the new document here, and say, okay, and if you tell me whether there's an overlap between the two documents or not. So again, some of you may not know these things, and you just send back again the document that you were told to correct. And if the person knows it and uses these tools, then that may actually make them feel bad that they're asking you to change something or make corrections and you're refusing to do it, and you're actually telling them lies in the process. So be careful, what you do with your documents. Okay, so let's move from this part. I guess that point has been driven home. Now let's get to the referencing, which is the aspect that I really think we should deal with, because for all intents and purposes, you don't want to do this manual referencing again. I think for efficiency, it's better for me to share my entire screen. I hope I don't have anything overly confidential on my desktop, but let it be.
And we'll catch you for breaching data protection.
Yes, I want to demonstrate the simplicity of this automatic referencing and why we should just not do the manual anymore. So the tool we'll be using is Zotero. I installed it already, but it's pretty simple to access and to find and download. So if you just type Zotero, you can see here the option to download. I think automatically it recognizes somehow that I'm using Mac, but if you want Windows, you can also just click on that, and then you should be able to download this software. It's free of charge, free, right? So, but when you have it, and also you have the documentation that tells you all the installation steps and all of that. When you have it, it's just this simple. This is what it looks like, right? So you can create a library and have your publication. I have nothing here now because I installed this recently, just for the purpose of demonstrating to us, and so it's just completely empty. All right. So I have to now. I've written this sort of this was manually written at the time, and as I've mentioned to you earlier on, one of the problems with this is if you were to delete this, it's not going to reflect at the bottom at the end of your where you have your bibliography. It's not going to reflect there because it's not linked. There's no link, right? So, but when you install Zotero and you do that with Zotero or any other referencing tool, you see that's automatically linked to the end. You will see that now. So when you have installed Zotero, I think normally you have to shut down your Windows and restart it again. You will see this tab appear here. One of the things we want to do now is to start referencing automatically. It is okay when I'm writing that I just write this like this. For example, at the time I have read the manuscript and I understand the concept, I can just write, let's say, let me just copy this and so I don't have to type it. I can say I've written something, whatever it is here, and then I put in brackets. I know this author, I know this work. I just read this manuscript, so I know that this is by Case et al. Then I can just write that here, and then later on I will find the reference to it. So just as an example. But that's also because I have read the work and I understand the concept, very well, and I have interpreted their work in my own words, and now I can even cite the reference without looking at the manuscript itself. Okay, so be that as it may, I want to import this now into Zotero. You can come to PubMed and find the manuscript that you want to reference, and yeah, this is the one I want to actually put now in Zotero. So you copy the PMID number. These things actually mean things. A lot of times we don't pay attention to it, but they mean something. So you can also use this DOI number as well. So you copy this PMID number, which I suppose is PubMed number. If you copy that, there is a place here where you can add an item by identifier. So here it tells you, the book standard book number or DOI or whatever reference number you want to use. Then I just copy the PMID, you saw that. So I can just click on this now and then see whether it's going to import this document. Oh yeah, this is here now. So this is the reference that I searched for. I guess that somehow we didn't see that very well. So let me search for the second one. I'm sorry that we had that tiny hiccup. All right, so the second reference that I want to bring in is this one. Again, I can take the PMID number. If I take the PMID number and just click here, maybe I don't use the PMID number now. Let me use the DOI numbers just to show you. So you can use that to import this reference as well. I'm sorry. Somehow that didn't copy. Yeah, so if we just also use that now, you see. So you see either the PMID number or the DOI number will bring in these references. So that's the first step. When you start writing articles, you start populating this referencing tool. And you see that this is very simple, very, very simple. You just take these numbers and then put them in here. I guess people in engineering can have a different platform they use for publication, but whichever, so long as you have the DOI number, you can cite that, you can include that work here, and you can also cite by extension. You can also create your own referencing, format and stuff here, and that will be used to cite to populate your article in the end. All right, so let's just try to put those two references here, and so that we can make some progress in that regard. I guess you've gotten the message, right? So I want to replace these two references with the new citation that I have from Zotero. So I can select this place. Actually, there's nothing. This is just a test now, so there's nothing to whether select or not select. No select. It's just doesn't matter. All right, so I just say here now, I don't know whether you all saw that there's a place that says add or edit citation. So I can click on that. The citation format is very important. Somebody also asked a question about that. So you have American Chemical Society, you have American Medical Society, so you have IEEE for those in engineering, you have Nature, Vancouver, etc. If you click on this place, manage styles, you will see, before I get into adding the reference, I just want to show you, you will see that if you do get additional styles, you will see that there are 10,000 plus styles for all kinds of journals that are existing currently. There are different citation formats for them. You can find those information here. You can select each and every one of them if you want. Each one of them you were interested in. This one, I don't know, says hydrotechnica. You can just select that, and then it comes in here, and you can use that later on. All right, let's use this one. We say that our formatting style is nature, and then I think that that's basically what we need to do. And then we have selected that, and we want to now put the reference style here. You may not have realized that there is a bar somewhere here waiting, but let me see if I can invoke it again. All right, so we can just say okay for now, and let me see whether that solves my problem. Yes. So when you select the style you want to use, it brings you to this place. There are two possibilities. one, you just, I could actually just search for this author name, which should come out because I have it on my library now. If I select this, it will automatically enter there. So, but I want to select two of them. But let me maybe first of all, I do the first one, right? If I just select that and say enter, you see the reference has now appeared here. Okay. The good thing about this now is that it should be at the bottom, but I'm going to show you how to get that also sorted in, but it should be at the bottom. Right, I want to put the two of them. I want to put the two references. So let's just go back one notch. If not possible, then I can just delete it. Right, so what I'm going to do is, again, here say add citation. If I know the author's name, and I do, in this case, just two of them, I can just then type this one. The first one comes out. The second one, I give a space. The second one is the work by Hanahan and Weinberg. I can select the second one, then it comes out here. Right, if I do enter, the two references show up here. Okay, now if after this, what I want to do is for this I want these references to also appear at the bottom. Then I begin to populate my work with additional references, etc., etc. All right, so I think that here you can refresh. Okay, it looks like it's coming up. Yeah, great, great. Okay, so I can just now write here references. Okay, so the two references that I have cited are appearing here. So we come to this place again. Now hit enter. Just as simple as that, right? The third reference is now here. Okay, so pay attention to the fact that we have the first one and the second one and the third reference here, and also the first reference is also here, right? So if we want to change this style to a different style, because now you see that the third reference is appearing on the list here. If we want to change this to a different style, we basically just need to come to this place and select document reference style, the citation style. We were using the style for nature, but let's
try Elsevier Harvard.
Yeah, let's select Elsevier now, and we said okay with that, okay? And we come back to our document. So you see now that it has returned this to author, and here it has removed the numbering system for these references, right? And this format actually includes also the DOI as part of the referencing. So, you know, what was happening during my PhD time is that I sent this work to my PI and he says, change this referencing style to something else. I begin to panic. I begin to panic because I have written a 31-page document, I don't know, 1,500-page document in the case of my thesis also. And now he's telling me to change referencing style. So I have to go page by page, 100 pages, to start changing these things one after the other. And in some instances, I have 100 pages of references or 200 pages of 200 list references or 100, 200. And then I have to start reconciling the numbers. So this is number one. I have to go to every other place where I have cited this work to find number one, to find this reference and then change the number, maybe from number one to number two. This is backbreaking. This is impossible, really. And so what I'm showing you today is changing, will change a lot for you, save you a lot of time, and actually improve your work substantially. So you can see that these references are linked. If you click on them now, you can see that there is this gray thing telling you that they're linked. Even this one, even though it's colored because I didn't necessarily delete the document before putting the reference. So I can just return that back to black. But anyway, the key point now is that the references are all linked. Now, if I send this document to my PI and he decides that part of his changes will be to delete what I have written here because to him, it doesn't make sense or it doesn't add value. If he deletes this, what happens? This reference should go. If I refresh this page now, let me go back to this and refresh it again. Ideally, it should go. I hope it doesn't disappoint me now. of, for some reason, is staying online again, but we have to skip Faith because we know that it should go. Now it's gone. You see that? So that reference is not there anymore, right? So I don't have to panic anymore to start running around trying to find, what did it delete? Where do which reference should I go and delete for that? This is automatically done for me. So I want to believe that that is the key thing that I wanted to show us. Let's make progress here now, because I guess the key point I wanted to highlight here is, that these references now can be, shown in multiple formats. You can go back, you are writing for, I don't know, let's say you want to select another reference. I don't want to go into the managers because it's pretty much the same thing, that we can go and select an additional one and then see how, how that works. Let me even see, let's say something from the BMC series of journals, let's say for molecular cancer, which is where I eventually published that work. Yeah, so this is molecular cancer here. I can select that. Oh, so this is something else that sense an error with installation, but whatever. So this is another thing. I'm not going to go through that process now. If you have difficulty getting a referencing style from a journal, for some reason you cannot get it directly, you can go to that journal's website and download it. They usually have the style for their referencing. If you go to where they have, instruction for authors, they usually have the style. So you can download it and, put it here by yourself. There is a provision to do that. But it shows up here anyway. I don't know whether it was because I double clicked it, but it's showing up here. And so I can just select that if I may. And with that, I hope that we are back to Thesis. Let me just keep track of what this looks like before, so that I would know if there's any change with the new formation that I have now. So sometimes these things take a bit of, you gotta be a little bit of patient. You gotta be a little bit patient to have things work the way you want them to work. But again, if you know what you're doing and you keep faith, I'm going to select this again, and you keep faith, you will get it. So now it has changed to the format for molecular cancer again. I don't have to do this manually anymore, to go and begin to check and see. And how you know that this is different, because this formatting that I'm using now puts the references in bracket. If you remember, the first one I was showing them as a superscript, and they weren't in bracket. So now this particular reference I have is in bracket. Imagine that you have a 100-page doc or 50-page document, and you are having this reference like this in box. It's very difficult for you to see it, right? It's very difficult for you to see where this references exist. You have to read this document from beginning to end to be able to spot them. So that's one of the reasons why I color my references so that I can see them if need be. So I would, in this case, now go back to what we had before, namely the one from the Elsevier Harvard with titles. And this is the reference that is most common for most people doing their undergraduate or PhD or master's thesis. So I can select that reference again as a style that I want to have. And you see that automatically this comes back to this. And many of you may not, if you have been writing, you know how much time this has saved you if you learn to use this from today onwards. And I do hope that you will go on and to start doing your referencing automatically from now onwards. I think that that's basically it from the referencing style part. And then I would like to go back to the PowerPoint presentation slide and finish up there. And I'd like to conclude at this point that, appropriate manuscript editing, saves you a lot of issues, a lot, actually, students, and this is something in our system, students, and I feel students are not necessarily walk through this process. I know it because I was there. I studied in the system. So I know it. Even, honestly, even in Western universities, it's not something that people normally just spend time teaching you how to edit your work. So some of the mistakes that I was even making at PhD level was also because there wasn't, even though I was already in the Western world, there wasn't necessarily a system to, maybe there were courses that I had to attend separately But it was taken for granted. That's the point. It was taken for granted that you already should know these things, but then you don't know it, and you keep making the same mistakes. Even as you move on to PhD level. So I hope that somebody's going to learn a lot from this process. Save the prospects of the possibilities of losing points. You can save, the prospects of being rejected if you take time and edit your work correctly. Plagiarism is a serious, serious offense. We must do everything possible to avoid plagiarizing. And I think the best way to do that is to read the work and understand it and present it in your own words. When you take personal statements from people as a template to see how you should write your personal statement, do not go copying what they have written and putting it in your work, because you never know. Maybe that was somehow online. And when these people run this what you've written against plagiarism softwares, or in plagiarism softwares, it runs it across whatever is on the internet. And then they will find that what you have presented as a personal statement was already used by someone else to get an admission somewhere 5 years ago. And at that point, you are already robbing yourself of the chance of getting into that program you're looking into. So now with the referencing, I've shown you how you can save a lot of time by automatically editing and formatting and reformatting your referencing style without fear or concern. If somebody deletes a fragment of your work, you do not have any need to worry about it, because you automatically can resync your manuscript to fit to a new referencing style. And also, a lot of us are writing, are submitting manuscripts to journals, and you get rejected in one journal, you go into another journal, and that second journal has a different referencing style. So you don't have to do the kind of thing I was doing in the beginning of my PhD time, to go back in a 30-page, 40-page document to start changing those referencing manually. And now you can just automatically, you saw what we have done in a few minutes here, click and refresh, and the new referencing style will be automatically affected for the whole of your manuscript. This saves you a lot of time, and I'm sure that many of you may not appreciate because you never were in that situation. But frankly speaking, this is I believe, one of the most important things every student must learn, and I hope that you'll be able to use it to a good effect from now on. So there are a couple of questions that were asked, and I'm not going to go through this because I think some of them we have already answered them. How to extract, relevant tests from multiple tests. If you have 50, 100 of them, how do you, extract the test? The best is to read them. If you have 100 of them, you have to cite 100 of them, you have to read 100 of them, and then try to get the central message. Reading doesn't necessarily mean reading from alpha to omega. Sometimes you are interested in the results. You are not interested in the methods and other aspects of their work, because you are just interested in the message they're sending. So therefore you either want to see that from their discussion, or from the conclusion they reached, or from the results they presented. So reading 50 manuscripts doesn't mean sitting down and read from introduction to the last word at the end of the manuscript. Of course, the question on how to avoid plagiarism, we've addressed that. How to check for plagiarism, you can use the online tools. I personally don't encourage people to even think about it, so just try to avoid using it altogether. Then, how to avoid errors. I've shown you how you can spot, misspellings, how you can spot, things like maybe some aspects of your work or different colors or different tests and different tests and sizes, and all of those are things that you need to, factor in and make sure you take care of them, that your work is clean in the end. When citing an article, whether to cite the content or the author's name, you have to cite the content and the author's name. I mean, if I made a discovery and you cite the discovery and you don't cite me, you have not automatically, you have not linked me to the work, and automatically you are literally falling in the realms of plagiarism. So attribute the work to the original source. That's the right thing to do. So what is the recent referencing style used for project work? Somebody asked this question. I think it's an interesting question. This is something that you have to find out from your department. Actually, the university and the departments should have their own specific referencing style. Some will tell you they have Harvard referencing, some say Vancouver referencing, they should have their own referencing style. If you're writing a grant, usually they will also tell, sometimes they'll tell you the kind of referencing style they want, and you can therefore stick to that referencing style. Again, as I mentioned, you can't create your own referencing style if it's not, for example, you can see that there are some journals that their referencing style and the other ones are slightly different, since that maybe one requires PMID, while the other one does not require showing PMID in the referencing list. And sometimes the one you want to use has everything except that it doesn't include the PMID, and you want to have PMID. Then you can actually go into Zotero and ask it to automatically extract PMID number and include it in that references. So you can modify each of those referencing styles you saw on that list to your own test. So therefore, departments will be able to tell students what referencing style they prefer for the written works, whether it is thesis or term paper or grant, as case may be. All right, so I think that's where I'm going to stop. I just want to thank you once again for tuning in today for this session. And I'm very excited about this session because for me, it's very personal, given that I know how much time I spent on referencing, and the fact that I was making that mistake even up to PhD level, even when there was EndNote in Heidelberg University, I have everything I need to do a good job. And there wasn't EndNote as well, but I was, sometimes that's one thing too, some of you will realize that when you travel from Nigeria to some of these other countries to study, one of the things you see that you are used to a certain way of doing things, and it's very difficult sometimes for you to, if they tell you to learn a new thing, you are scared. You think that it's going to take you more time. So with the day I realized that I could have saved far more time if I used EndNote to do my referencing and save myself so much stress, I literally wanted to cry. I felt like I had wasted so much time over the course of my PhD for all manner of things that I wrote that, I realized that I could just in 3 minutes, 5 minutes, change the style of my referencing for documents that are like 100 pages, 50 pages. So what I've given to you today, for those of you who have paid attention to it, is something that really took me a miraculous amount of time to come to terms with. But I do hope that you don't go making the same mistake that I made. And on that note, I want to thank everybody again for tuning in. I want to thank the administrative staff of the Zeribe Nwosu Foundation, and a lot of them are in the background, working behind the scene, to make this seminars a possibility. Chief Upai in particular has been a champion of our mentorship activities, sharing opportunities. I think it's extraordinary. And that if we have that level of commitment from not just us, who are sharing these things, but also those who are having to follow those things up, I think we're going to succeed. I just want to use this time to just tell you that for those opportunities that have been shared, it's worthwhile to click those links, to follow them, to see whether there is something that could be beneficial for you, and apply for them. I know it's disappointing sometimes, and maybe a lot of times it is disappointing that you're applying for things and you're not getting the results that you desire, and people lose hope at some point, become disappointed. I understand all of that, and no one is immune to it. I am also suffering that at some point at different levels. So we are all into that process, but I encourage us to hold on, to keep trying, and believing that it is going to be solved. One day you will get a solution to the desires of your heart that you have long pursued. So on that note, again, I want to say thank you to all of us, and I look forward to taking your questions. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Dr. Zeribe, for that amazing presentation. I've really learned a lot from that, especially some of the icon in that MS Word. Thank you for highlighting those. Thank you so much. And I know so many of us have learned one or two things as well. So I think at this point, we can take some questions. I just want to read one before asking the person that the hand is up. There is a question from Salam that is asking about that The question, the person wants to know if you can briefly touch on similarity index and paraphrasing in terms of plagiarism.
Okay, so with paraphrasing and so similarity index, I guess is like when they run these checks, to see to what extent. Yes, it's important for a start that there are things that you just, no matter how you try to modify them, and I think I said something along that line, they're going to come across as somehow plagiarized. For example, if you have the methods, for those of us in the sciences, in the life sciences, where you are looking at, something like Western blot, everybody is doing Western blot one way or the other. So there are certain things that are going to be similar. You prepare their protein, you load it in the gel, and there's no other way to say it, right? So what happens is that when people run the plagiarism check, and those aspects where they know that to a large extent there is likely to be similarities, they should ignore them. Methods. If you run a whole list, maybe the referencing may also maybe flag as plagiarized as well. But how else are you going to change the references? If the manuscript text is there, the title is there, is there. There's nothing you can change there, right? So therefore, when people assess papers for plagiarism, they look at them section by section, or they should look at them section by section. Pay attention more to the introduction, pay attention more to the results, and more to the discussion, because in particular the discussion, and the result, because these two parts, actually the author I've mentioned, introduction, results, discussion, because this part should actually be in your own words for the most part, right? So if it's coming across that a substantial proportion of that, which is what you're referring to, I guess, to as a similarity index, a substantial proportion is likely coming from something that is published somewhere else, then that's a red flag. I'm not sure what the threshold is, for them actually calling it plagiarized, but I guess any number somewhere in the range of 60–70% should be, should give people some concern. If it's like that, if the whole of the document is giving like 30% or so, 35%, I would take into account things like methods being there, and maybe I wouldn't pay too much attention to that. But again, they will check which aspect of the work is this 30%, 50%, 70%, and that may be critical. If the core aspect of your result is the key aspect that has been plagiarized, then even 30% is serious. So I guess that answers the question. But I don't want to put a score.
I think I agree with you, because
yes,
I've also put some chart. We try to consider, especially while marking students' submissions, we try to consider several things, whether there are chunks of paragraphs that are copied, or whether there are several places in the submitted work that are highlighted as copied.
yes.
So if there are several of them, that means the student haven't really put enough work.
Yes.
So they can't take that as what they have generated.
Yes.
Yeah. So there are so many things, not just, it could be 30%, like Zeribe mentioned, it could be 50, but we don't just take that 30, 50 as hook, line, and sinker.
Yes.
You go back, click those matches to get highlights of the whole work to see where those plagiarism are from,
yes,
whether it's from a particular point or is spread across, and then in order to make judgment.
Yes. Well, somebody is asking whether you need internet access. You don't need, you need the internet access for Zotero to import the references. If the references are already imported, you don't need the reference, you don't need an internet to link them to the manuscript. So what you want to do in the beginning is to, start, populating your library as you are reading, and then later on you can, do your referencing with or without internet, if that becomes an issue.